Hello, everybody. We are here live. I am joined by Academy staffer Christy Benson and Academy grads Emily Priestley and Lisa Skavinsky. And we're here today to talk about some recent events and to sort of give a voice to, I think, those who have been voiceless. And where Christy, you were talking just before about how this might come across as a bit ironic.
Yeah. Yeah, we sort of recognize that we're hitting back against being hit back. But amongst discussions with the four of us, we really did decide that we wanted to sort of give a platform and sort of be able to give a public voice for people who were coming to us quietly and sort of having been bullied into quietude, because they were, worried to speak out. And we all really feel strongly that the harmed parties here are essentially dogs, and we wanted to sort of be a voice for dogs. And I think Lisa always has been a really sort of strong voice to us too, by saying it's not just dogs, it's dog guardians or dog owners as well.
That end up getting harmed.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me do a little bit of backstory. So what happened originally, and this was some weeks or a couple of months ago, is that a high-profile trainer had the opportunity to push back against balance training in a public forum. And he could have, for instance, framed electric shock users as extremists. And I should say that we are taping this today in the wake of the UK or England announcing that they are about to prohibit electric shock on dogs, which will be effective in February of 2024. Anyway, so rather than labeling electric shock as an extreme measure or electric shock users as extremists, the trainers who don't use aversives were labeled as extremists. Then after this, there was a narrative. So a few people were confused and disappointed by this. And I thought most of us relatively politely, expressed our confusion and disappointment. And this was then framed by sort of a mob as R plus trainers or the good guys, sort of that we eat our own, that we're somehow piling on this person. Then we felt a little bit, wait a second, hang on. This is not the injured party here. And the comments, by the way, that were pushing back were in very much a sea of sycophantic support for what was labeled as bridge building. And so what we want to talk about is this. Was this sort of piling on or an additional kind of gaslighting on top of the original sort of throwing R plus trainers under the bus as quote unquote extremists?
Yeah, I would say that to me it did feel like insult to injury. I think afterwards how it played out. And I think it's easy enough to sort of see the allure of the idea of bridge building and see the allure of really charismatic trainers who are trying to make this point to be inclusive and to like really include all people. But then if you sort of peeled back the layers down to the nugget of what it was like, holy cow, this wasn't a minor statement.
I think too, like we're also coming from a place where we're not people who aren't building bridges. So we do I have friends that aren't completely force free. I have friends that, are crossover trainers or crossing over. I work with a lot of clients who are using tools and we're getting them off. And it's not about, I think it was like a second layer of throwing us under the bus when it was implied that we weren't bridge building, because most of us are. And anyone who's been through the academy, I think we come from, we're taught how to have those conversations and how to bridge build. And so it's probably not even that we were being asked to build bridges. We were being asked to just turn a blind eye to what is probably abuse in many situations. And that's where there's just so many layers of complexity. And I think that's where a lot of us come from with like we're hurt by this. We don't know how to move forward because we're being told to be silent when animals are being hurt. And that's the hard part for me anyway. So
that, and I think there was, I feel like it was perhaps a bit of a professional betrayal to make these sweeping generalizations and statements And I saw it a lot of places from people I didn't expect it from, generalizing that all force-free trainers, all positive reinforcement trainers are negative and they shame people, and they're punitive to their own, and they're punitive to others. And I just have to say, based on the posts that I viewed, and based on my own everyday encounters with my colleagues, whether they're academy colleagues or KPAs or self-taught trainers, I see it everywhere. I saw none of that, and I've seen none of that. I saw a few comments kind of quietly not pushing back, but I'd say concerned questions like, I'm not sure what's going on here. I didn't see anything particularly strident. I didn't see any ad hominem attacks. I didn't see, all I saw were people patiently asking, and the pushback was, shame on you. And there were few comments to begin with. I didn't see many people pushing back at all. I saw a little bit more, yeah, way to go.
The percentages didn't really
It
add
didn't
up.
add up that this was this disproportionate mountain out of a molehill. I'm sure there are a few people that might have been a little strident if they felt particularly strongly, or maybe their communication skills were such that that's what they went for, but I just wasn't seeing it. So it felt very bizarre to suddenly have this messaging, which felt very much like marketing to me. Force-free trainers are bad people. Force-free trainers are
Intolerant.
Yes, all of these things I just don't see. I have so many colleagues that work very hard none of us in this group seek out arguments, social media or otherwise, and attack people. I mean, none of those things happen. And the vast, vast, vast majority of professional, educated, humane dog trainers would never and do not do those things. So it felt a little bit like, wow. It wasn't just hurtful, but it was inaccurate. It wasn't a real phenomenon.
Wasn't a representation of what happened. It should be said that I didn't see them, but apparently there were some really nasty comments, and we should say that does happen. Now, we might also want to put that in context of the day-to-day sort of harassment, stalking, derision, and belittlement that we get from balanced trainers on a daily basis. And, so it really seems like there's rather a double standard going on. Has anybody experienced this? I mean, firsthand, I certainly have.
Oh, for sure.
I haven't, but I mean, our colleagues certainly talk about this kind of thing and talk about the fear of, I know many trainers who won't post anti-shock collar posts because they're worried that the balanced trainer crowd will come in and review bomb them and it really affect their business. And also it's terrifying, like I think it's scary to have a bunch of people being really negative. And they don't just go onto the one shock collar post. They might go on every post and scroll down your Facebook feed of your business page,
Right,
and
bad reviews.
Yeah, and leave bad reviews that that they've never used your services. So I think there's a fear, and I don't think it's an unreasonable fear, that we're a little bit worried about speaking out, which is, I mean, it's bad.
Yeah, and that's part of the impetus for what we're doing here is that we have had a lot of private messaging to us, especially you, Emily, and you, Lisa, when you've put forward something sort of pushing back against this whole sort of thing, that people have come to us and said, wow, thank you for doing that, because I'm afraid that there is a contingent of people out there who at the moment are afraid to speak up for fear of this kind of mob whose rhetoric it is that anything other than quote unquote inclusivity is somehow an ad hominem attack. So drawing any kind of line in the sand and saying it's really not okay to throw us under the bus, and it's really not okay, if we get back to sort of the core of this argument, which is it okay to hurt and frighten dogs to train them? And we say, no, it's actually not. And saying so, now is sort of considered an act of hostility. And I think we do a pretty good job, at least amongst ourselves, of drawing a distinction between an ad hominem attack and saying a practice or an idea, which is fair game, is not okay. And so this current that it's been put forward recently that we should welcome all methods, and even the word quote unquote inclusivity, which you talked about, Chrissy, that word has been co-opted, and it struck me as actually obscene to use a word, and this word has been, means moving towards greater social justice, and to use this to legitimize choking and strangling, frightening and electrically shocking dogs. That is something that I think we may want to think about. Any thoughts about this?
Yeah, well, I think, I think there's certainly, like, if we go back to the beginning, because there's so much great stuff to unpack there, but not only are people afraid to speak out, but people are also burnt out. So they may be like me, and I'm not afraid to speak out. I'll speak out, but it certainly takes a toll when you're continuously having to monitor your posts and you're getting attacked, even if you're not afraid anymore. Like, we all know in this industry, there's burnout for so many different reasons. And so many people just get silenced into just not posting anymore, not weighing in. And that's a huge, huge problem, because when we start silencing this crowd, even if we're not being, combative, we're just putting forth, the facts about tools and techniques, to have people just end up be silenced. I mean, we work with dogs like this all the time. It's like learned helplessness. So you just get to the point where you don't know what to do anymore. So you just finally, I've just had enough. I can't post anymore. But it's creating this like one-sided narrative. And so it's not just about fear, it's also about burnout, and then when we're gaslit and told that now we're the problem. Like, I sometimes I'm very rarely at a loss for words, but in this whole situation, I've been a little bit like sometimes I just feel like I'm a little frazzled. Like, I don't know even where to start anymore, because it's coming from all sides. We're not allowed to call ourselves force free anymore. We're not allowed to say anything negative about tools anymore. We're not, like, I don't even sometimes know where to start. It's just it's become so convoluted and complicated that it just doesn't even, I think a lot of us are just kind of drowning in that, if that makes sense.
And the thing is that we're taking a clear, and I might add that our ethical stance is rather an obvious one. There's now a mountain of research, thousands of practitioners getting the job done every day without these tools. And given that we've got the mountain of sort of anecdotes, and we've got the mountain of research saying that we don't have to do this, it then makes it really clear that, okay, so why would anybody be doing what we don't have to do? And so it's not really, I mean, I think we've moved beyond sort of it's a matter of opinion. And so saying this, that this is now being labeled as extremism or failing to build bridges is, I think it is a co-op. They're trying to control the narrative, which is, this is what's extreme. No. Electrically shocking dogs is extreme.
Yeah. And I feel, if I might just kind of come in here, I do want to point something out, that I know that I'm not alone in this. I know there are thousands of practitioners who got into, who went, by the way, sought out, paid for, and spent countless hours studying animal learning and behavior. And of course, we're talking about based in known principles of animal learning, not kind of malarkey that's out there, that's everywhere. An incredible amount of time and effort. And for me, I'm not a trainer of other trainers. I don't do online programming of any kind. I came to this because of animal welfare. My whole purpose in learning about what drives behavior in dogs and how we best approach training, management, handling of them, it's always been about improved welfare. It's been about, making sure that dogs aren't being relinquished, aren't being euthanized for things that we can help them with. And certainly animal welfare includes not hurting and scaring dogs, especially unnecessarily doing so. So for me to be told, a big part of my job, a responsibility that I feel to my clients and to the community that I serve, is to make sure that they're aware of the science. They're aware of the mountain of peer-reviewed and published studies that tell us that when we exploit fear and pain using these methods or tools in dogs, we have very predictable, very well-known side effects of fear and aggression. So it's not just the quality of life of the dogs. These are dangerous tools and methods by and large. And it's important for me to get that messaging to people. These are the tools and methods you want to avoid. And this is why we can do this without hurting and scaring dogs. And this is how. And it's a very big responsibility that I take on to make sure that I'm getting that important messaging. Labels do sometimes matter. They are sometimes required so that owners know how to find their way to factual information, to reputable sources that are safe for them. And so to be told we're not allowed to say what methods we do and don't use, or that others, I'm never going.
It's all fine. It's all equivalent.
Yeah, it's very bizarre to me. We put labels on food packaging, and we put labels on movies. If there's excessive violence that you don't want your 5-year-old to see, it's okay to say, we don't use these tools. We do use these tools. This is why. Here are the studies. You know what I mean? And to be told that, saying that, giving that important, necessary information, because I'm coming from an animal welfare perspective, and my goal is not to build bridges with people who choose to do things the way they choose to do things. My goal is to create a safe place for the clients that come to me. My job is to make sure I'm serving them based in known principles of animal learning, using modern information. We know better, we do better, and my goal is to make sure they are safe and they get their needs met. So for me to be able to not be allowed to say, I won't use those tools or methods is insane.
And here's why, and here's
here's why, and here's how we're gonna do it. And
yeah, and that's not extreme. That's not being extreme.
No, that's being a reputable professional in this industry.
It's pretty clear that the people holding out, so this is in 2023, so a long time after it, sort of information has been widely disseminated about how to train without aversives. And so I think that those, they're going to be on the wrong side of history, holding out, in other words, being the last holdouts. But I think at this moment, they're not going to go down without a fight. And I don't think some of them, I think, are not aware that this is going to not look good in 20 years. And so let's talk a little bit about, so where we are. So in the early 90s, the organization APDT, they took a big tent approach. So this is not the first time that there's been sort of the push for, bridge building and, let's include everybody. And that's how we're going to maximize crossing over. So the APDT deliberately took a big tent approach. The assumption was that aversives-oriented trainers, all they needed was education, that as soon as it was apparent to them, you can do it otherwise, that of course anybody would obviously cross over, and a thinking person would. That's an understandable assumption. And the way to encourage this was to take all comers and to be inclusive. And so that happened. Is it safe to say that this is an experiment that has been tried, and it did succeed among those who actually wanted alternatives, but that this approach was always doomed to fail with those who, for whatever reason, don't want to train without aversives? In other words, are those who aren't crossed over just lacking education? Is failing to say it's not okay to shock, hurt, or scare dogs to train them, is that a form of enabling? We're just delaying the inevitable, which is eventually, this stuff is going to be illegal, and we need to, how is it that we have to sort of, give package warnings before we say things like, hey, it's not okay to do that?
Yeah. And honestly, if you are a dog trainer, if you're a dog owner, in an unregulated industry like this, where you've got, and you may not even realize the trainer over here, has extensive education in animal learning and behavior, and is incredibly competent in getting the job done and doing it humanely and effectively and efficiently. And then over here, you have someone who is helicoptering dogs or strapping shock collars to the genitalia of a dog, and you don't know the difference. I mean, it's already been hard enough for the dog owning public to navigate that. They don't know. It's unregulated. There's no consumer protection.
No, so there's no mandatory labeling, as you said before.
Right. And so, you're it already murky. It was already like treading water just to tell people, just to get owners to say, ask about how your trainer plans to change the behavior in your dog. What's going to happen when they get it right? What's going to happen? Just getting that messaging out there is exhausting and only minimally effective. So now we're being told you can't even say those things, or you're somehow, just a terrible.
It's being hurtful. And so
Yeah.
somebody elects to electrically shock dogs, saying, it's actually not okay to do that, is somehow hurtful towards that person, as opposed to, wait a second, there's a dog being shocked.
Yeah. And there's an owner that's dealing with the fallout of that. Most of my private training is because of that. They don't come to me with counter surfing. They come to me with, well, the dog was counter surfing 3 months ago. I went to a board and train. The dog came back very different, not counter surfing anymore. But by the way, you fix the, 3-bite history. I think it's
I wonder if there's a bit of an assumption. I know Jean and I have tried to unpack this in many, many Facebook messages, but I wonder if there's a bit of an assumption that we've arrived. For some of the trainers, I think, who are force-free, they're sort of we need to stop being so vituperous because we have arrived to a better place. And I don't think that's true. I don't think the research bears that out. I think the stories that Lisa tells me daily, demonstrate that we have not arrived. And I think we can really look at the history of women's rights and queer rights and trans rights and go, wow, this is not something, we can't rest on our laurels. Rights can be taken away. I've had rights taken away. My friends have had rights taken away. This isn't, we can't stop talking about this now. We need to still keep fighting. And then I think along that same line of maybe people just don't know is Jean and I were wondering if there's some trainers who are in our camp, but who are sort of saying, well, we need to reach out and build bridges, who just don't know what some balanced trainers actually do to dogs. If they don't have personal experience, they haven't seen this in action, maybe they don't have that same visceral reaction of, oh my God, how, why, how can we sort of try and be giving hugs to people at this point, and accepting of those techniques? Because they maybe haven't seen it. I don't know.
And again, to draw the distinction between an ad hominem attack and a practice, it could mean I know not whether the character of people. However, and I'm not going to comment on the character of people. However, the practice of using collars, electric shock collars, prong collars, choke collars, scaring dogs, any of that stuff, it is abundantly clear that there's no need for it, that it carries side effects, and that it's not okay. It's just not okay to do that. There's just no universe at this point in time where it is okay to do that, and that needs to be said again and again and again.
And so now to be silenced from being allowed to say that, or at least the attempt,
which I think is I don't think that's a bug. I think that's a feature. I think that's the point.
Right.
To make us be quiet.
This inclusivity idea too. I mean, it's a misnomer. So not only is it being co-opted from, in a kind of ironic and uncomfortable way for me, but it's also a misnomer because it's not inclusive of everybody, right? Because if your primary goal in this profession, in this industry, is to champion animal rights, animal welfare, quality of life, then you're actually not under that big tent, right? So again, the messaging to the dog owning public is anything goes. It's all philosophical. It doesn't matter. You know what? It matters to the dog and it matters to their families. And so we got to get it right. And I don't get to, I like you always have said, Jean, the Flat Earth Society is not invited to speak at
the geology conference.
Right. And so I'm not sure why we're saying everything goes, and even unpacking some of these the messaging that's out there about this, unpacking it is, I don't use these methods and tools. Of course, I would never use these methods and tools. First indicator that you don't think it's okay, but I'm okay with other people using these methods and tools. And then 12 paragraphs about how force-free trainers are judgy. And then finally, listen, the goal is making everybody have a safe space so I can extend the line of communication so I can get them to stop using these tools and methods that you just said you're okay with. I don't quite,
Yeah,
just
yeah. Is it okay? Is it
awesome.
is it okay or isn't it?
yeah, like what,
Well,
what's,
yeah, and that's the thing
is
is
it a
like
Trojan horse?
we're being asked to be held accountable, like, you know, our behavior towards them by saying that their tools aren't okay. We're being held accountable for actions that I don't think we're actually doing. I don't think we're not being inclusive. But they're not being held accountable. And these days, this is where I think it's getting to the point where we probably have to focus on things like bans. If we can't have these these conversations, we're not getting anywhere. This information is not new. It's decades old. This wasn't okay when you wrote Culture Clash. Like, this isn't brand new information.
Not
And
new.
we're still having this Facebook Live because I think we are moving forward, but it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, it's really hard to tell where we're progressing and where we're not. And at this point, you know, maybe we just have to move into like what England is doing and just ban it so that we don't
think
even
that's-
have to have this conversation anymore.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
like,
by definition, those who are still doing it are the ones who are the most invested. So they're the ones who are they're most into it. And so I think they're the ones who are going to go down, not go down easily because they haven't just leveraged the education and stopped doing it. They don't want to, or they think it's absurd. And so, okay, then the law, and that's where I think that's where we're headed.
Well, the science is ahead of the law, as we often say, and I think it's the other thing is I really don't know. I don't have a problem if colleagues who claim to be, educated, force-free, humane trainers, if their goal is to educate as many other trainers and how they go about it, who they market to, awful.
Right.
That's 100% up to
course.
them. I had no trouble with that personally. I know not everybody felt that way. I just, you know what, I'm busy. I work 75 hours a week, and I mean, just clearing the decks for this very important conversation is a lot for me. So I'm not spending time worried about what people who have these online programs, who they're talking to and who they're building bridges with. I don't have any.
Yeah, and they
issue
might capture some
Yeah, and I
stragglers.
hope so. And I hope so, because that effort may pay off. Some of these people giving out really good quality information to dog trainers who are going to be taking the cases anyway and getting them to learn. I applaud it, honestly.
Yeah. But saying we're
Throwing us
extremists
under the bus, yes, it as a form of that marketing,
Yeah.
trashing an entire industry of primarily educated, humane people. It just sat poorly. And the number of people who haven't said, the thousands, I'm sure, who haven't said that they're feeling really, really sore about this, depressed about it. Like, it's a very overwhelming thing to have, the main gurus in your industry suddenly throw you under the bus, and then everything you've worked for forever be belittled. It's a pretty tough place, I think, for so many of our colleagues. I can't tell you how many people just left social media. I mean, I know people who just said, can't do it anymore. I can't do it. So who really is this bridge building for? Who is this helping? I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I do know I am prepared to die on this hill. I know
and I
that.
don't think it's bridge building. I think it's enabling is what it is. It's like, and that's the thing, it's enabling and gaslighting being spun as, bridge building, but
Yeah.
and this is where I think we just end up like, where do we even start? Like, when I wake up and I see on social media that it's not inclusive anymore to call yourself force free, like how far down this rabbit hole can we go before we're just like, this is where I think we just don't even know where to start. Some of us, like, and some of us, I think, are more, like, I don't want to say we're fighters, but we have, we just keep going at it. And I'm going to wake up and post again about it so that people know. But when you start to lose that drive, or that, you just get it from all angles, you just become silenced. And this is where I think we really have to decide what it is that we find acceptable. I mean, you talked about welfare, we said this before, but when you're talking about welfare of animals and abuse and neglect, if you're not allowed, and I think all of us agree that you're not allowed to leave an animal without medical care anymore. You're not allowed to deprive an animal of food and water and shelter. All of these things. And I think every camp agrees on that, but it's okay to shock or, extreme things like like you said, strap shock collars to genitals. It's okay to helicopter a dog or hang a dog. It's okay to leash correct or pin. All of these things, like, the two don't line up. And I think that's where we really have to make some distinctions about, calling it what it is. If it's neglect and abuse to leave an animal without food and water and shelter and things like that, psychologically speaking, it's abuse to do these things to dogs as well. And we've proven that.
If
So
somebody were trying to get the Humane Society to say, you know what, you're not being very inclusive if, but the people who elect to not provide food and water to their dogs, you're kind of, being uninclusive of them when you say that that's not okay.
Yeah.
That's
basically what this is. And
parallel.
I wonder sometimes if the difference is, you can't misrepresent starving a dog. Like you can say a shock collar's a tap or a TENS unit or, but you can't say an emaciated dog with their hip bones and ribs sticking out is something that it's not. You know what I mean? I wonder if maybe the obviousness, of starving and neglect is different.
And it is. Occasionally there'll be a leaked video of a balance trainer doing their thing in private. They thought they were in private and they're doing something. And there's like this huge outcry, and this person, often there's legal charges filed against them and so on. But most of the time video of these people behind closed doors is not leaked. And certainly the ones who do less or they think they're doing less extreme stuff, they say, don't lump us in with that. But from our perspective, you don't have to do any of it. You really don't. And so, so is there anything that we have missed that we wanted to touch on?
I would just like to put a message out there for those of you who do feel that this has been hard for, that you really are not alone. I know, because if you're in your own corner of the world trying to get through your day, life is already hard enough. Like you said in the intro to this, in the posted intro to this a few days ago, it's already a challenging industry to get your needs met.
Hard job.
It's not easy. And that's without getting that kind of friendly fire, without being, bullied into silence or shamed for, God forbid, having a position on animal welfare. You're not alone, because I can't tell you how many people, when I posted just, hey, I just want to say a few things about this recent thing. I had posted this not long after the whole thing started. I can't tell you how many people sent a friend request. I can't tell you how many private messages I got.
And they don't want to speak up.
Yeah. You're not alone out there. And like I said, I am prepared to die on this hill that animal
Me
welfare.
too. I'll die on this hill. It's not okay to strangle, shock, etc. dogs, period.
We're not alone in that. And you out there who have been feeling bad about this, you're not alone in that either. It's okay to speak up. I'm not somebody who likes to get involved in the all of it, but it was worth it to me to do so, because that's why I got into this, is to help dogs, to help their owners, to make the world a safer, kinder place for them. I'm not going to ever silence that. You don't have to either.
I think one thing that I sort of wanted to sort of get across was, I think that there is a lot of vigorous debate amongst us force-free positive reinforcement trainers, and I think a lot of it is useful. Sometimes I feel kind of like, but I do it different. But like
there is legitimate debate.
What choice of DRI is best for leash reactivity, or should you go with the CER or DRI? Or can we use negative punishment? I think we do have these vigorous, useful debates amongst ourselves, right? And I don't think that's the same as consuming our own. I think because both sides of those are like, I want it to be efficient, I want it to be welfare forward. We're sort of, how can we be the most welfare forward, the most efficient, best serving dogs, giving them the best lives, the most joy, possible. So I do think there is a lot of debate amongst positive reinforcement trainers, but this is not that.
Yeah.
And that is not us consuming our own, which I think was sort of this
No,
odd
yeah,
at
yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of passion, a lot of sort of thoughts about that. Yeah, for sure. That's it's apples and oranges to then say, well, or it's okay. Therefore, electric shock. It's all, yeah.
Yeah.
We can even have conversations saying, debates about whether or not ad hominem attacks are okay. We all would agree here, absolutely.
No,
You never
never okay.
never do that. We all feel that way very strongly.
Yeah. But ideas and
every
practices
single
are okay.
Colleague I know. But we can talk about tools and methods. We've got last time the science backs that up. Why are we on the defense about it? It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Which is, and that's sort of a good segue to our next panel discussion is going to be, why are we still talking about this? We're going to be digging very deeply into sort of the tools and methods and how is it that in 2023 there's any debate still? Other final thoughts? Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. And again, as Lisa said, you're not alone. And thank you to our panelists. And we're going to be with you again, I think in a couple of weeks with our next installment. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.